Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace. As you know, well over a decade here on the Pace Report, I've had the honor and privilege of sitting down and profiling musicians and groups who have left a very important mark in American roots music. The band Tower Power this year is celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they just recently played two unprecedented sold-out nights at the City Winery here in New York City. Now, what was very unique and very different from the Tower Power and their contemporaries who hail from Oakland, California, is that all bands in the late 60s were going loud, meaning there was either one or two guitarists and a bassist and a driving rhythm section, but these guys diametrically went against the grain. These guys were backed by five horns, and they were founded by Emilio Castillo, who is on tenor saxophone, and Stephen Doc Kupka, who played the baritone. Now, over the years, these guys have backed and recorded and toured with the likes of Huey Lewis and the News, Santana, Bonnie Raitt. And what makes them so very different is that the horns, along with the funk and soul, have made them have this undeniable sound. Now, tonight I had a chance to sit down with Doc and Emilio to talk about the origins of Tower Power in Oakland. We also reflect on their time with the legendary music impresario Bill Graham, as well as talk about their brand new record, which is on Mack Avenue Records, entitled Soul Side of Town. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the Tower of Power 50th anniversary tour live at the City Winery as part of the Pace Report here in New York City.
Cause
Guys, congratulations, 50 years. And this record, I have to say, is a little bit different from all of your other projects. Why did you decide to work with the great Mr. Vanelli on this album?
He invited me down to do a few days in his studio, a couple of days. He's married to our business manager, so I've known him a while. But I'll be honest, I didn't know about his work. I knew, he produced his brother, and I listened to the hits. I didn't really know his work. After I started working with him, all these musicians would tell me, "Oh my God, you're with Joe Vanelli, he's got this great reputation." I didn't even know about it. What I noticed was, when I was in the studio, he was completely meticulous, super creative, an excellent musician, and an excellent engineer, and really easy to work with. And so we did the couple of days. It was so great. Then he says, "You want to do a couple more?" And I said, "Yeah." And when we did the next 2 days, by that point, I realized the project was way too big for me. I had already cut 17 tracks. We did the 2 or 3 with him, and I said, I'm trying to cut 25, which turned into 28. And I said, I need help, man. You feel like help me finish this? And he said, yeah. And that proved to be a super wise decision. I didn't know it at the time, but I had a good feeling about it, and it really paid off.
And also, the 50th year, also, you guys have a new beginning. You guys are with Mack Avenue Records, who they have done some tremendous things over the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's a nice company. We like them, and it's working out so far.
And I understand that Mack Avenue also has released 4 of your older recordings also.
Yeah, that was in the deal, the record deal. We had our own label for a while. We started TOP Records, and we were doing it ourselves. And that ain't our business. We make music, And so when we started negotiating with Mack Avenue, we talked it over with management, and we just decided, let's see if we can just do a deal with them. And they did a great deal for us. But they put those out even before the record was released, and it's going great.
Let's talk about some of the origins of this group. You guys started off in the Motown as the Motowns.
Yeah.
And the Bay Area in the late 60s, mid 60s, was really a hodgepodge of everything from blues, jazz, rock and roll. And you guys played at a dynamic venue called the Fillmore West, Bill Graham.
We did. We were a little soul band called the Motowns. The only reason we were called the Motowns is because I grew up in Detroit. My mother said, if you're going to play soul music, you should be called the Motowns. You grew up in Detroit, and that's what we did. We hired Doc. He was the first hippie we ever met. He came in the band. We started writing, and we immediately the big focus in the Bay Area, and indeed in the nation and the world, was the Fillmore West. Bill Graham had started this thing in the Bay Area, and it was worldwide famous, and so anybody that was anyone wanted to get in there, and they had these Tuesday night auditions. So we got ourselves a slot, and it was at the end of the year, and we had already written all the songs for East Bay Grease, and then we got busted by the ABC for being underage. So all the clubs that we had been playing, they couldn't hire us no more because they'd lose their liquor license. And so all we did was rehearse from like January up to November, and we went in to play that audition at the Fillmore West like our lives depended on it, because it did, And I told the guys, we were at the end of our rope. I said, look, I'm going to fly to Detroit and spend the holidays with my family. If nothing happens from this, I'm not coming back. And I flew there. Doc was devastated. All the guys were worried. And a couple of days later, he called me up, and he said, you got to come back. He dug it. I go, who dug it? He says, Bill Graham. He wants to sign us. And I had this little Vox organ that I didn't like, and I told him, hock the Vox organ and send me a ticket. and I flew back, and we got our first record deal.
Doc, Bill Graham was very, very instrumental in bringing all the musical genres to that venue. On a given night, and we're going to go into Aretha Franklin in a minute, God rest her soul, Bill Graham was really introducing many demographics to not only just the area, but the venue.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, you could see a show with Roland Kirk, Santana, and us. And, he had soul bands, he had Latin bands, he had all the rock bands, and he put together shows that he thought were interesting musically. That was a big thing for him, and so it was great for us. I mean, he launched our career, and I'm grateful about that.
you guys have been backing and have recorded with some very instrumental artists, and one in particular, and Huey Lewis, who's from the Bay Area also. He's the guy that really kind of put you guys and saved you guys at a time when the music industry was changing and the musical styles were changing.
It's true. All those bands are coming out, like the Knack and the Motels and Devo, all these new, they called them back then punk bands and new wave bands, and we were not that,
Disco too.
They called us dinosaurs, Disco had gone out, and now it was punk and new wave, and so they didn't want nobody that had been, in the business 5 years, and we had already been in 12, and they started writing about us like we were dinosaurs and all this, but one of the biggest bands in that era was Huey Lewis and the News, and they happened to be fans of the band. And he came, and we started a friendship, and we did one of their albums, and I was really impressed with their music. It was very soulful, and then they did the second record, and it really hit the top.
Sports. Was that
Sports, yeah. And he came to me, and he said, we got a super big hit, and we're wondering, would your horns go out on the road with us? Because we were going and sitting in with them a lot. They'd come to L.A., we go sit in, and they loved it, And I told him, I said, I got the band. He goes, well, what can we work out? We'll pay you really well. And I said, it's not about the money so much. I go, it's about the band. I go, if you promise me you'll promote the band at every turn, I'll talk the guys into doing it. I go, and you got to allow me to bring Tower Power out to the major cities to do midnight shows. You got to announce it at the arena, and we need you guys to come and sit in. Tell everybody you're going to be playing with us. And he said, no problem, because they love doing that, So we'd play, the big venue in New York City, whatever. I can't remember what we did, Madison Square Garden, I guess it was. And he announced to 25 or 30,000 people, After the show tonight, we're going to the Bottom Line to see T.O.P., and we're going to be sitting in. Hope you're there. We get to the gig, it'd be besieged, So he kind of single-handedly resurrected our dead career. We owe him a lot.
Doc, I got to ask you a question. In the 60s and 70s, we were inundated with loud. We were talking, and you know what I'm going with this. You either had two guitars and a bassist and a drummer, and you're cranking it out. But you guys were diametrically against the grain. You guys fronted 5 horns. How did you guys successfully make this formula work?
Well, we were coming after Sly, who was huge. Sly Stone, and he had a band like ours, not as many horns, but horns and rhythm section where the different instruments were separated. You could hear them individually, and we just perfected the tower thing, and so I say we had some rough times at the early '80s, and I can remember there was this rock history book, and I looked up from '78, and I looked up Tower Power, and they said that they had some hits in the '70s, and they were going to wander off into the sunset, and that was 40 years ago. They predicted our demise, and anyway, but we were able to make it happen. Huey Lewis saved our career in the mid '80s, and then we took it from there, and here we are.
Now, you on the baritone saxophone now, and you playing tenor sax. Who were some of your musical influences on the instrument, and also just because you guys write some very unique songs, and have and continue to write some very unique songs?
Well, for me as a tenor player, I'm a really poor tenor player, and people always laugh when I say that, but I am. I don't solo much, I don't have a lot of technique. I play parts really well, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in a horn section, Now, there are some great players that I dug, Hank Crawford and Maceo Parker and King Curtis, but really my thing was, the horn section.
What about you, baritone? Because, in the jazz world, you had Jerry Mulligan, and I'm trying to think of another baritone saxophone. Pepper Adams, right.
Well, I don't improvise much either, just a little bit, but I make a horn section sound good. So I checked out horn sections, and I mean, sax player-wise, King Curtis was the before, the during, and the after for me. And like there's Howard Tate's Greatest Hits produced by Jerry Ragavoy. That horn section was like us with the trombone added. And then when we had Mick Gillette, he played trombone also. So I like them a lot. The Stax band I liked a lot, and just those horn sections is what impressed me. I mean, Jerry Mulligan, he was so good. I mean, I couldn't listen to him much, too intimidating. I mean, he was a very intimidating bari player. He could, you know, I tend to play low. He was all over, you know, he had all kind of chops, play all that bebop stuff that I couldn't even start to play. And anyway, it was horn sections that I checked out.
Come on, make some noise! Come on, everybody, get ready for more because this time is real, baby. Come on!
We lost Aretha Franklin about a month ago, and you guys had the honor of opening for her, and she recorded that landmark record live at the Fillmore West, backed by King Curtis and the Kingpins. Can you tell me and give me some reflections of her, and also, while we're on King Curtis, because he's one of my favorites also, that band is just, whew.
Yeah, it was me. I'm Bernard Purdy on drums, you know, Cornell Dupree, Gordon Edwards. Some of the gigs we did with her, Gerald Jamah played, you know, Billy Preston played, Richard T., the horns, just phenomenal, you know, really great. And, you know, we opened for them at a time, we were actually feuding with Bill Graham at the time. We had like a 1-year feud. And, but even still, even though he was angry at us, he knew we were the best band to open for Aretha, and we did that, you know. And I remember being backstage on the one night he allowed Cold Blood to also open. It was a Saturday night. And I remember sitting back there with the Sweethearts of Soul behind the scrim, and we were listening, and they were sounding good. And Mick Gillette was playing with Cold Blood right there, and they had sort of stolen him from us, because they were bigger than us at that point. And I remember the Sweethearts of Soul, one of the girls said to me, "They're good." And I said, "Yeah, they're good." And she goes, "But not as good as you." And then I remember I went to the dressing room, and I wanted to go in, but it was, totally packed in there, because it was the big media event of the year, And so it was a small dressing room, and all these people are in there. So I'm standing in the doorway, and I turn sideways, because here comes Aretha wearing that white dress with the white turban that's on the cover, and really tight fitting, and she comes. I turn sideways so she could squeeze through, and we get sandwiched in the doorway together, nose to nose. And she looks at me, she goes, "Tower of Power, my favorite band." And I just melted in front of her, man.
Doc, I have to ask you, because the crazy thing about that album is the musicians. I want to ask you, who followed? Did Aretha follow that band, or did they follow Aretha?
Well, they went on first. The Kingpins played like Memphis Soul Stew and a couple other songs, and then Aretha just came out after they had done a few songs, same band and everything. My memory of that gig was a week before we played a NAMM convention or NARAS or something, and we played with the Kingpins, and we, at the time, as we do now, everyone played into a microphone, and we had 4 horns at that time, and they did not. And I remember that after that convention, every one of them played through a mic at the Aretha gig. So, because I thought that was pretty cool that we influenced them that way.
You were talking about, did the band follow her, or did she follow the band? Aretha was in complete control of that band. Aretha is a gifted musician. She wanted it exactly the way she wanted it, and that band followed her to a T.
Let me see those hands. And I'm not
Doc and Emilio, this is the last question, and this is the hardest question I ask all musicians. What does soul music mean to you?
To me, soul music, it's a moving of the emotions, and that can be physical, it can be emotionally, but somehow, some way, when you're playing soul music, you know, it tugs at your heart, it tugs at your energy. You should walk out of there sweaty and having gone through a complete metamorphosis emotionally with those ring your heart out like a rag ballads, you know, and it's an emotional music.
Yeah, either sing along, dance along. The rhythm make you want to move. The melodies make you want to, bring your emotion, like Emilio said. And it comes from the heart, and it's musical, and it comes from the soul, and it's great.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the City Winery here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the members of Tower Power and the co-founding members, Stephen Doc Kupka, as well as Emilia Castillo, for their time. Also, I'd like to personally thank Miss Fiona Bloom for the Bloom Effect for arranging my time with the guys of Tower Power. Also, I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the City Winery for their warm hospitality. Make sure you go out and support Tower Power's brand new CD, which is the #1 album on the contemporary jazz charts, called Soul Side of Town, which is now available on Mack Avenue Records, and you can order it on Amazon.com as well as Mack Avenue Records website. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
Ain't nothing I can say. There's nothing I can do. I feel so bad. Yeah. I feel so blue.